Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? I hope you're all well. Now, before we kick off with this webinar session, if anybody's got any sort of technical challenges in viewing or hearing this webinar session, what I'd highly recommend for you to go through is the usual kind of tech troubleshooting that we all tend to go through if something doesn't work for us first time around. So if you are tuning in on a desktop or a laptop computer, feel free to just hit the refresh icon on your web browser page. Alternatively, if you are tuning in on a mobile device such as your smartphone or your tablet, feel free to come out of the YouTube app and then click back on the link that you received for this webinar session. Hopefully everything should be correctly loaded for you as well. Please also note that this session does have live captioning throughout the course of the session. So if you did wish to toggle that function on, you can do so by hovering over onto this YouTube video. And one of the icons that you'll see dotted around kind of, I guess, one of the sides of the screen or at the bottom of the screen will be the letter CC inside of a small kind of box. And that is the live captioning icon for you to toggle it on or off throughout the course of this session. Also, be sure to grab yourself a pen and a paper just so you can kind of jot down notes as we go along. Okay, I hope everyone's set and ready. So welcome to this Google Digital Garage webinar session all about how to build a CV and write a cover letter. My name is Rikesh and I'm going to be your presenter, taking you through the course of this session, which is going to last for approximately 60 minutes. So I'll kick off first with just a little bit about me. So I'm a trainer for Google's digital skills program, Google Digital Garage. As well as that, I'm also a digital marketer. So I help businesses to help them to create and to grow an online presence in order to attract more customers and clients to them. Now, before I used to work in the world of kind of marketing, I used to work in a completely different industry myself, and I did a degree in that specific different industry as well. So for me, I actually kind of made a career change and a career pivot. Now, when I used to work in my previous industry and I was applying for job roles, that would typically require me to send off job applications, which consisted of a CV and also a cover letter document, which is going to form the theme of today's webinar session. So that's just a little bit about me. I'd also like to introduce to you at this stage my colleague and fellow Google Digital Garage trainer, and that is Tessa. Now, Tessa is going to be our chat moderator. So whilst you won't see Tessa on screen, you will see Tessa appearing in the live chat. And Tessa's already been in the live chat, kind of welcoming you all. So feel free to get involved in that live chat. That live chat box, which is on the right hand side of your YouTube screen at the moment, that is your space over the course of this next hour to drop in your comments, drop in your questions. You'll actually see questions that will appear on screen. And these are kind of more discussion points. Especially when it comes to a topic like build a CV and write a cover letter. We all kind of have our own experiences that we can bring to the table. So feel free, if you're comfortable to do so, to share them in the live chat and kind of share some of your answers to the questions that you will see on screen throughout the course of this webinar session. Now, in order to type in the webinar box, you will simply just need to, in the live chat box rather, you will simply just need to sign in to your YouTube account, which is very quick and easy to do. I know some of you have already been doing that and getting involved. I did ask a question just before we went live for this session, just asking where everybody is kind of tuning in from. I guess that's the beauty of YouTube, is that you can kind of tune in from any part of the world. So I'm based in the UK. We've also got Malgorzata. Apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly. You are also tuning in from the UK, so welcome to you. We've also got Rizal and also Chelsea, both tuning in from the Philippines. So welcome to you all as well. We've also got Denise, and we've also got Divak as well tuning in. So welcome to you all. I really hope that you find this webinar session useful and you get some value out of it. And as I mentioned, feel free to have a pen and paper on hand throughout the course of this session. Now, the session that we're running today on Build a CV and Write a Cover Letter is one of many webinars that we actually run as part of a wider Google Digital Garage webinar offering. So if you have a look down below me where I'm pointing, you'll see that there is a video description box. Contained within one of those paragraphs in the description box is a link to the Google Digital Garage website. And many of you might already be kind of acquainted with that website, because that might have been the website that you used to sign up for this particular Google Digital Garage webinar session. So if you click on the live training tab, you will see that there will be a schedule and a list of upcoming webinars on a variety of topics. A lot of them do kind of sway towards the side of kind of the world of marketing and digital marketing specifically, but you will find other career-based webinars such as Build a CV and Write a Cover Letter that will be available on the website for you to kind of book when they are next running, such as the likes of Find Your Career Goals. That's another careers-based webinar session that we do run as well. So be sure to kind of stay tuned to the Google Digital Garage website, and I can just see that Tessa has kind of dropped a link in the live chat for you with the link to the Google Digital Garage website as well. Quick hello as well to Marvin, who's tuning in. So welcome to you, tuning in from Argentina. So welcome as well to you, Marvin. So when it comes to the session on Build a CV and Write a Cover Letter, let's actually have a look at how we're going to be kind of, I guess, breaking down the course of the next hour that we have together. So in the session, we're going to be, first of all, concentrating on the CV document. How do we build it? What sort of elements do we need to put in this document? Hopefully, we'll just kind of consolidate maybe some information that you've ascertained over the years from your studies. So when you were going through kind of different stages of school, or maybe kind of college, even university. So we're just going to consolidate all that information that a lot of people might have been telling you over the years to include within a CV document, hopefully just make it a little bit more kind of streamlined and coherent in terms of how do we build out this CV document. What we're then also going to do is move on to the cover letter document. And we're going to be exploring how we can go about writing this cover letter document. So what we're going to be taking you through is we're going to be taking through what we identified to be a good structure for creating a cover letter. So feel free to have your pen and paper on hand, just so you can jot down this structure, because this will be really useful the next time that you sit down to write a cover letter, because it will give you that kind of structure on how to lay out a cover letter, what to include within a certain paragraph, and then how does that flow into the next paragraph? What do you need to talk about in that paragraph, and so on and so forth as well. Now, once we've done that, we're then going to round off this session just by looking at how we can get ready for our job search. So just kind of looking at where we can look to find jobs online, and a few considerations when it comes to looking at job vacancies in general as well. Now, before we get going and looking at CVs first and foremost, I want to draw your attention to this fantastic resource that you can see here on screen. And you can see the title says free career certificates available from Google. So these are Google Career Certificates, which is a fantastic initiative which allows you to kind of earn and improve job-ready skills in certain sectors and industries. And you can do this by completing online courses, which are accredited courses themselves. Now, the only requirement is that you are based in the UK. And you can have a look at the link, which is on screen here, goo.go/career cert UK. I'm sure that Tessa will kind of drop this in the chat for you as well to find out more information. Now, in terms of some of the courses that are available for you to, or the course topics that are available for you to do and kind of obtain these certificates in, would be what Google have identified to be both high growth and high demand areas of kind of work and industry, such as the likes of IT support, project management. You've also got user experience design, which is abbreviated to be UX design as well. You've also got data analytics, and you've also got digital marketing and e-commerce. So if any of these kind of topics sound kind of vaguely even interesting to you, then I definitely recommend that you check out the link that you can see here on screen. Okay, so let's actually have a look at kind of, first of all, asking you a question. And let me know your thoughts in the chat about this. I'd love to kind of read out some of your career aspirations. Now, I appreciate that this question that you can see on screen can seem a little bit abstract. It's a little bit kind of, it can seem a bit of a big question. So feel free in your own mind to kind of break this question down and think, well, okay, let me type into the live chat, what are my career aspirations for the next 5 years or the next 2 years, or where do you want to be in a certain period of time? Just give yourself kind of a little bit of a deadline. And I'd love to kind of read out some of your career aspirations a little bit later on. So in terms of CV document, how do we go about building it out? So again, I want to kind of get you all involved in the chats here, and I want you to answer this question that you can see here on screen, which is, what is the primary purpose of a CV? So let me know your thoughts in the chat. You know, why do employers, why do recruiters, why do they ask you, please send a CV to email address, or please send it in by post to this this address? Why is this CV? What is the purpose of this CV document in general? So Divak has mentioned to attract employer. Absolutely, yeah. I think we'll kind of scratch a little bit further with that as well, Divak, because it's not just to attract the employer; it's to kind of more to attract the employer by giving them information. So yeah, that absolutely kind of just plays in hand with that as well. Vessi has mentioned to get an interview. Yeah, it's a really interesting point that you mentioned there as well, Vessi. When it comes to a CV document, the best way to look at a CV, and also on equal parts, look at a cover letter, with these documents being essentially like kind of the gatekeepers to get you through to the next stage, whether that be an assessment center, whether that be a face-to-face one-on-one interview. It is kind of it's to get you to that kind of next stage in general as well. Yeah, so Divak's mentioned, yeah, you need to be a story seller. Yeah, we'll be kind of talking about kind of aspects in terms of what you need to include within a CV in just a moment as well. So thank you very much for those contributions there. So what does a CV mean, first and foremost? What do you mean by a CV document? Well, CV is an abbreviation, and it's an abbreviation which is of the word, or the phrase, I guess, curriculum vitae, which is a Latin phrase. And the Latin phrase of curriculum vitae translates in English to the course of your life. And that's something very important to keep in your mind, because when I was kind of younger and I was at school and they said, oh yeah, Rikesh, you need to create a CV. This is what you kind of need to include. I just always thought, oh, it's basically just going to be a list of your education and a list of your work history or work experiences that you've had, and that's it. And that's not necessarily the case. If you think about what a curriculum vitae should showcase, it should showcase the course of your life. So that includes aspects such as hobbies and interests, strengths and skills as well. So it's very important to always keep that in your mind in general, in terms of what this document is all about. So a CV essentially is the first contact with an employer or a recruiter, if they are kind of the middle person in between you as a candidate and them as the employer. Usually a recruiter will be that middle person in between the both of you there as well. Now with a CV, it should essentially be a summary of experience, summary of your experience. This is something I will speak a little bit more about when we come on to a format, or the format of a CV document, because there's only kind of one place, I would say, that you should be writing in sentences. The rest of it should pretty much be in bullet point format, because you're providing snapshots of information here, there, and everywhere in your CV document. So even when it comes to your working experience, it should only be a summary and not kind of a full kind of novel or essay about what your previous experience has been as well. You also want to get across in this first contact with employers with a CV document that you are a goal-orientated and relevant candidate for this specific vacancy that you are applying for. And this is going to be very much kind of a theme that I'll be kind of mentioning throughout the course of this session, whereby no two CVs and no two cover letters should ever be the same. You want to make sure that you tailor make a CV and tailor make a cover letter, both respectively, for a specific job vacancy. You don't just want to have a blanket CV and just think, right, copy and paste, let me just attach this document. Maybe with a cover letter, I'll just change the name of the company and that's it, and then just send it off by email. You want to make sure that it's very much kind of customized and tailor-made to a specific job vacancy. And that's going to help when it comes to creating that kind of rapport from this first contact with employers in general as well. And you always want to start off on an authentic and honest footing with an employer and or recruiter as well. So you want to be truthful about everything that is in your CV document, especially if you think about, as was mentioned earlier on in the chat by Vessi, that it's a document that in theory should help us to get through to an interview stage eventually. So we want to make sure that anything that we've got in our CV document, that's something that we are able and more than capable to answer and talk about if questioned upon in the interview stage as well. So in terms of what information should be included within a CV, now this is something I actually kind of alluded to at the very beginning of this webinar session, because I'm sure over time, over the years, we've all been kind of told, oh, you need to include this, or you need to talk about this, you need to talk about that, you need to promote this and highlight this and kind of showcase a bit more about your ability here, or showcase a bit more of your experience here as well, or maybe you speak a little bit more about your education here. But there are kind of general elements and kind of general pieces of information which should be included within a CV document. And what we've done is we've kind of created different building blocks here in terms of what we believe should be included within a CV document. So that includes basic information, an opening summary, work experience, your education / achievements, and also your skills and strengths. And by the way, what you can see here on screen, this is not kind of a definitive order in terms of the way it should be laid out, because I'll speak about layouts a little bit later on. But when it comes to basic information, opening summary, the top two, they are the only two that are fixed in this whole list order right now with these building blocks. The rest of it we'll kind of look at a little bit later on and look at, well, which one should we lead with perhaps as well. So let's kick off with basic information and just kind of explain what typically that is. So that is typically something we can even rephrase to contact details. So this is where we'd have our name at the top of the CV. We'd have either our address or location. Now, the reason why I say address or location is because nowadays, as candidates, it can be useful depending on the organization that we're applying for or applying with, essentially. It could be seen as useful and helpful if we are somebody who is able to travel to multiple locations and is okay with doing that in terms of, do you have access to your own vehicle? Are you able to easily take public transport on a daily basis if required as well? So some people do on their CVs, they'll actually write certain areas that they will cover, which is only like maybe an hour drive or 2 hours drive from them perhaps as well. Whereas other people might just think, oh, let me just put down my address, especially if it's just maybe a local company or local organization that I'm applying with and don't seem to have other branches elsewhere. Then it might just be more prudent just to put in your address, because that could be something that may be seen in employer or recruiters you may be kind of seen in your favor because you are somebody who's local as well and won't have trouble kind of getting into the workplace specifically as well. So this is very much a judgment call on your end there as well. Now, in terms of other contact information, this would include the best telephone number to get you on. Usually these days is kind of your mobile number, and also your best email address to contact you on as well. There is other information that that you can add it within this section, but it very much kind of depends on the job role that you are applying for. And a lot of the times, employers and recruiters, whoever essentially has written the vacancy, will ask for specific other pieces of information. So, for example, if you are somebody who is applying for a driving role, then one piece of information that might have been included in the job vacancy is that, oh, please confirm that you have a full, clean UK driving license, for example, that you are applying for a job in the UK, that is, or any other country in that respect as well. So that's kind of the first kind of segment and first building block in terms of the information that we look to fill out. Now we then have our opening summary. Now this is the only place pretty much within a CV document that you can write in, or you should be writing in sentences. And even then, only 2 or 3 short sentences. So in total, the opening summary should be a real small kind of a little paragraph, essentially, just with those 2 or 3 sentences. But you can see here, it works like an elevator pitch. Now, an elevator pitch is one of those kind of introductions that we might have done previously. So if you kind of think about the word or the term elevator pitch, it's a little bit like if I was to get into an elevator, or in the UK we call it lift, but I guess lift pitch doesn't sound the best. So if I was to get into an elevator with an employer who was hiring, and I wanted to get that job, then the way I want to think about this is, how can I introduce myself to this individual whilst we are both taking the elevator, which is going to take like 30 seconds or going to take a minute for one of us to then get out on our floor in general. So how can I get across in a short, concise and succinct manner who I am and what I'm all about in general? And you can see here, we want to briefly describe ourselves. And the main thing that we do want to get, one of the main things that we want to get across in this opening summary, is that we are motivated as an individual, as a candidate, and that we would be a relevant candidate and would be a relevant individual for this job that we are applying for as well. You want to make sure that you are able to showcase that relevancy within this opening summary segment as well. And it could be that it might take you quite a bit of time. So first of all, you might just think, oh, let me get everything down on a bit of paper or kind of typed up in terms of what I want to get across in my opening summary, and then let me kind of get rid of words, let me get rid of a couple of sentences and just kind of trim it down until you get to kind of 2 or 3 sentences as well. And then it's something which it might be useful to kind of get somebody to look over and kind of think, oh yeah, maybe you can get rid of this sentence, or this doesn't make sense, or maybe change this up to make it look a little bit kind of neater and fit within kind of the 2 or 3 sentence kind of bracket there as well. So after the opening summary, the next kind of 3 parts are ones that can be molded and moved around accordingly. One of the building blocks is work experience that we want to mention within our CV. So we put our most recent working experience at the top, whether it be paid or unpaid. So if it's voluntary experience that you've done, you can still put that within this section, but it's important to highlight that a certain role is voluntary. And it can be something as simple as you put the organization that you work for, you put the title, you put your dates, and then in brackets, you put in voluntary. And that is a nice, clear distinction to anybody reading your CV that this was a voluntary work experience that you did. And it doesn't in any way, shape, or form negate the fact that that is still experience that you've got under your wing, essentially, there as well. You want to highlight kind of key projects, key results that you gained out of that working experience that you did. When it comes to kind of these key projects and results, we always want to make sure that we are having kind of a copy of the vacancy nearby that we can refer to and think about, oh, what's the daily tasks and responsibilities? And how can I relate some of these projects and tasks and results that I achieved in my previous role with some of the daily tasks and responsibilities that I will be required to perform if I was to get this job as well? So that's kind of working experience. You then have your education and achievements. So again, most recent at the top. You want to kind of add all of your kind of academic qualifications, professional qualifications. And again, thinking about kind of key projects, key kind of coursework, key kind of research that you've done throughout your academic studies. Think about what could be kind of relevant to the role that you're applying for as well. Just to kind of maybe demonstrate a little bit of understanding about the industry that you're applying within. That could be something that you feel might be beneficial as well. And then you've also got a section called skills and strengths. And remember, we looked at the very beginning of this webinar session, we looked at what does CV mean, and CV stands for curriculum vitae, which translates to, from Latin to English, into meaning the course of your life. And that includes skills and strengths. So what we essentially want to be doing here is we want to be kind of answering questions such as, what qualities would people describe me as having? Which soft and technical skills do I have and do I possess? And how do these skills and how do these strengths relate to the job description for the specific vacancy that I am applying for as well? So again, that's just kind of reinforcing. We don't really want a blanket CV. It's nice to have a master CV with all the information that we want to add in, but then we want to kind of mold and tailor make a CV for a specific job application that we are kind of sending in as well. So if we first of all have a look at skills, we've kind of broken down skills here into kind of three elements here. So we've got soft skills, we've got hard skills, and digital skills. So in terms of soft skills, these are essentially kind of interpersonal traits that we all tend to have. And we will have kind of certain traits over others. So some traits we might have include the likes of leadership or teamwork and communication. We've then also got, in contrast, hard skills. So these are kind of skills that we've either picked up through, I guess, more traditional means of studying and learning. So whether we've gone to kind of school or college, university, or we've kind of picked up through other means. So, for example, accounting, that is probably something we probably would pick up if we did a university degree in there. However, speaking another language, that could be something that we've kind of picked up and developed, a hard skill in speaking another language. You could have developed that through essentially living in a household where you speak more than one language as well, and you've picked that up over time, and that is still a hard skill that you've developed, even though you've not kind of done that through, I guess, a traditional learning means as well. Now, an extension of hard skills that we've created here is kind of digital skills, which is an element within hard skills as well. And the reason why I wanted to kind of segment digital skills is because nowadays digital skills do form a large part of vast majority of roles that are out there and vacancies that are out there as well. So it's important just to be aware of the need from employers and recruiters to ensure that candidates do have some level of digital skills. Some may be even more technical, some may be just on the opposite end of the scale, just having kind of basic digital skills as well. Now you can see examples here on screen, such as coding, video editing, social media. So, for example, with myself, with video editing, that was for me self-taught. I didn't go to a specific college or university or anything like that for editing videos. I actually picked up the hard skill, the digital skill of video editing through YouTube. I was able to jump on and type in how to edit videos using, and then I just typed in the video editing software that I was using at the time. And I learned that way just by pausing the video, using my second screen and actually kind of going back and forth. And that's a skill that I kind of developed through a combination of learning by non-traditional means, essentially, but then also by doing as well. And that's a skill that I developed as well. So it's always something to consider here when it comes to skills. Now you can see other examples of skills. So you can see the soft skills, which are in grey here. So teamwork, project management, networking, presentation as well. And then you've got examples of kind of your hard skills and digital skills as well, such as kind of coding, programming, and graphic design as well. So that's something to consider, and that's something that we want to showcase and highlight within our CV document. Now, we also have our strengths as well. Now, these are essentially qualities which we pick up over time. And these are qualities which we're not necessarily ever going to get a certificate for or a degree for at all. But these are qualities which employers and recruiters actively look for. So they actually look out for what your strengths. And what we essentially want to do is we want to kind of answer these questions, which are, what am I good at? What do I like doing? And what makes me stand out? Now, some of these questions might be quite sort of challenging to kind of self-reflect upon. And a lot of the times we can't necessarily trust our own kind of instincts in terms of, oh, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, because that's just us being probably too close to ourselves in kind of answering a question such as that. So it might actually be more kind of useful and prudent to actually look outside of ourselves and speak to people that know us quite well. And there's a really fantastic exercise that we talk through in our Find Your Career Goals webinar session about strengths. So definitely recommend that you check out that webinar session. So if you have a look at the link in the video description box below, check out the live training tab and see when the next webinar session is running on the topic of Find Your Career Goals. Now, some examples of strengths include that you're solution focused, you're passionate, hardworking, you're dependable, you're analytical. But the caveat with these strengths, and same thing is with skills, is that we want to make sure that we can back this up with an example. Within our previous job role, within any volunteering that we've done, within any sort of research and coursework that we'd worked on, and projects that we worked on through academic studies as well. We want to kind of be able to showcase and highlight these rather than throw them out and throw them into our CV documents, just kind of buzzwords. We want to make sure that we back them up. Now, we might not have too much space to write all, kind of our explanation essentially to back these up within our CV document. But if we can leave kind of short, sharp kind of bullet points to that effect, that's fine, because if we do get to a interview stage, that's when we are able to explain further in terms of and kind of elaborate a little bit further in terms of our strengths and skills as well. Now, as well as strengths and skills, we also want to showcase our experience on a CV as well. So what constitutes experience? Well, there's all these different elements and factors that do tend to constitute experience, such as internship, part-time jobs, volunteering, even hobbies and extracurricular activities can constitute what experience that you have encountered are as well. But again, with any type of experience that we decide to put down on our CV, we want to make sure that we back that up. So we want to kind of answer these questions and also kind of run these through our mind before we even jot this down onto our CV. So what do we do within that role, within that experience? What do we get out of it? What do we achieve? What were kind of the tangible results? And how do these results, how does this experience that you've had, how does that relate specifically to this job role? How does it relate to this vacancy that you are applying for as well? So we want to make sure that we add that in going forward as well. Now, in terms of formatting of a CV document, in terms of the length of a CV, it should be no more than 2 sides of A4 pieces of paper. So I think that's very, very important to to be aware of, especially in the UK. That is kind of the accepted length. I don't know if there is kind of a specific kind of length for kind of all countries. I appreciate everybody's tuning in from different parts of the world. But in the UK, it's no more than 2 sides of A4 piece of paper unless stated otherwise in general. Now, in terms of how to kind of structure it all, you can see contact and opening summary are kind of the top 2 on both of these kind of building blocks that you can see here on screen with the different colors. And it's all kind of bookended by the reference section, which is at the bottom. Now, when it comes to references, if you're running out of space, just put a title that says, just put a heading that says references, and then underneath, just put in available upon request. Just because you're running out of space, and if the human resource department need that extra information, they can request that from you at later stages as well. And that's something to consider. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, when we're looking at kind of some of the building blocks that make up a CV document, we want to lead with whatever we are most powerful with. So after the opening summary, if we've got a lot of working experience, but not as much education, not as much key skills and strengths, then lead with our experience that you can see with the block on the right-hand side. Whereas if we've got not too much experience and not too much education, we've got a lot of strengths and skills that we've built up over time, that's something that we can lead with vice versa as well. So that's something to consider there when it comes to formatting. And there's some fantastic CV templates that you can check out online. There's some fantastic ones on Google Docs, also on platforms like Canva to have a look at as well. Now, in terms of an example of a good a well laid out CV and a not so well laid out CV, you can see the one on the left. It looks good because everything's in its kind of rightful place. It's all kind of well kind of structured and listed. You've got a title which is a slightly different color, and it's slightly larger, and then you've got the text and information underneath as well, and it's very clearly laid out. You've got black text on a white background, which is easy to read as well, whereas the one on the right hand side, you've got kind of black text on kind of a beige or kind of yellow background on there. But you can also see that the formatting is a little bit off in terms of it's all kind of centered. So it is kind of hard to see kind of where one line ends, and then you think, oh, right, okay, so now it's after age, it's the email address and etc. as well. So that's just kind of a few factors just to consider. But CV templates will be able to kind of help with this kind of scenario to ensure that you have a good CV template to kind of work from, and then you can obviously mold and adapt it to your needs as well. Now, some final kind of things just to be aware of when it comes to CVs before we go into cover letters is with a CV, we want to be clear and concise, especially because we only have 2 sides of A4 piece of paper to write on. So bullet points are our friends here. We want to be transparent about any gaps that we have in our CV. So if we did take a little bit of a career break, or we took a break for other reasons, whether it be kind of starting family or whatever the reasons that we might have in terms of why we would have a kind of a break within our CV from kind of working. We want to be truthful. We want to be authentic and honest from the very outset. And remember, going back to kind of what the definition of curriculum vitae means, it means the course of your life. So employers and recruiters alike are actively looking for you to be upfront with this information, to kind of let them know, give them the insight into, well, why was there a 3-year gap between you working in this role and this role, for example, as well. And before you go ahead and send that CV off, be sure to get a second and third opinion, not just from a spelling and grammar point of view, but just make sure that everything is coherent as well. And that's something which we can't necessarily always do. So we have to kind of get somebody else just to kind of look at it with a fresh pair of eyes going forward as well. So let's have a check-in, see if there's any sort of comments or questions. So I can't see any questions at this stage. If there are any, feel free to let Tessa know in the chat, and a combination of either myself or Tessa will be able to provide our thoughts as we go along. So with that in mind, let's kind of move on to writing a cover letter. So first and foremost, what is a cover letter? Well, cover letter is a letter. It's in letter format, so we can write in sentences and we can write in paragraphs, which is very different to what the permutations were for a CV document. And a cover letter, as the name suggests, it kind of is a cover. It goes on top of our CV. So if it was all printed out, which these days it isn't often that CVs and cover letters get printed out, they're all very much kind of digital, and they all pretty much just get sent via kind of emails these days. But if they were typically kind of printed out, then you'd have the cover letter on top, and then underneath you'd have your CV document. So an employer recruiter will read your cover letter, and then once they read that, it gives them kind of a precursor into reading your CV document as well. But should you include a cover letter or not for a job application? Well, I want to kind of show you these 2 figures that you can see on screen. You can see that 40% of recruiters say that they actively look for a cover letter on applications, and 45% of recruiters say that a lack of a cover letter will result in their CV being put onto the no pile. So just by those figures alone, my theory these days is just, if in doubt, if it doesn't say in the job description, because I know some job vacancies can be sort of vague at times, and it will say, oh, just send an email just send an email with your CV to, and then they'll provide the email address, and they don't mention anything about a cover letter. So you feel a little bit in limbo to think, do I need to send a cover letter? Do I need to create one? Do I just need to send a CV? So my thinking these days is, if in doubt, create the cover letter, even if we just put it in as kind of the body of our email address in terms of the email content that we send with our CV attached. That is still something that's providing more insight and information to that recruiter and or employer as well. So how do we actually structure a cover letter in general? So this is essentially what we have identified as a really good structure to kind of work from. And this is something that we can apply to any kind of cover letter that we are kind of sitting down and typing up in general as well. So we're going to be working from top to bottom, from the hi, hello dears, right the way through to the sign off. So kicking off with the greeting. So we got hi, hello dear. So hello and hi are a little bit kind of informal, or can be seen a little bit informal. So maybe just go with the classic dear. And then once we've done that, we want to make sure, where possible, that we try and find out who is the hiring person at that organization, or who is in charge of that job vacancy, because that's the person's name that we want to jot down after we write down dear to begin the letter off as well. We then move into our first kind of proper paragraph here, which is our introduction, where we want to answer these questions that you can see on screen. So who are you? What are you interested in? You want to also mention what job you are applying for as well in this introduction, because recruiters and or employers might be hiring for multiple roles at the same time. So we want to make sure that our CV and cover letter respectively gets put onto the correct pile. And also, you can see here this question of where did you hear about it? Where did you hear about the job vacancy? Where did you see this job posting? Now, you might think, well, Rakesh, this is something which, do I need to put this? And from our part as a candidate, it doesn't really mean much at all, because it doesn't matter whether we write that sentence in or not. But it's something which can be really useful to kind of endear yourselves to a recruiter and or employer. So if you say, "Oh, I heard about it through through a LinkedIn advert, or through seeing the post on LinkedIn, or seeing it through Indeed or Monster Jobs or anywhere else," for example, it doesn't do a lot for us, but for that recruiter or for that employer, it might think, "Oh yeah, well, we've got a candidate here who said that they came in through LinkedIn." And it might help them with their kind of their marketing efforts and kind of efforts in terms of putting this vacancy out into other places that are more visible in general as well. So for us, it's kind of like a throwaway sentence, but it can mean the world to the reader in general as well. We've then got our next paragraph, which is our summarizing yourself paragraph, which I like to call kind of your power paragraph, which is where we are able to kind of highlight and showcase our strengths, what we actually spoke about earlier on when we spoke in the skills and strengths section of our CV block. So we want to kind of answer questions such as, what's important to me, what am I good at, and what do I enjoy as well. So that's where we want to kind of really consolidate all this information. And remember, we can write in sentences, we can write in paragraphs here. However, we need to be mindful of the length, because the length of a cover letter should typically be, the majority of time, no more than one side of A4 piece of paper as well, and it should be in a proper letter format. So with kind of the details of the recipient at the top of the page as well, and then we start off with "Dear," and then the name of the person, and then things off with the sign off, which we'll have a look at as well afterwards. We've then got our problem versus solution paragraph. So with this paragraph, this is a really useful paragraph, which may even help to set you apart from other candidates and from the competition, because what you are doing here, as kind of the name suggests, is you are looking to identify the problems, i.e., what is the reason for this organization hiring? Why are they hiring for this job role? What is it? It could be that it could be something very simple in the sense that they're expanding, but a lot of the times, even though they are expanding, a lot of the times they require somebody who has a specific skill set and a specific set of strengths as well. So this is where you want to really go through the job description, go through that vacancy with a fine-tooth comb, have a look at all of the language and the wording that's used, and actually find the answer. And a lot of the times you will find the answer within the job description, within that vacancy. If you can't, that's when you need to kind of widen the search, do a little bit of research around the company, around the industry in general, what's the general challenges around the industry. And that's where we can also step in. Once we've identified the problems and the reasons why they are hiring, we can basically step in and say, "Hi, I'm the perfect candidate to kind of solve and be the solution to these problems perhaps as well." So, and this is something which, as I mentioned, can potentially stand you in higher stead from other candidates. Obviously, it's going to depend on the person on the other end of the screen or the other end of the page who's going to be looking at your document. And obviously, it's going to be rather industry specific as well, but it's definitely something to consider. Is thinking about this problem versus solution paragraph. We'll look at an example of that coming up in just a moment as well. And then also think about relevant achievements. This is an optional paragraph to add in, because the keyword here is relevant. So we want to add in any relevant achievements that we feel are going to be kind of applicable for the position that we are applying for in general as well. And then we finally got kind of links to our website and kind of relevant kind of hobbies and interests that we might have, and volunteering that we think are relevant to remember as well. And then we've got a sign off, which is the way that we end our letter. So we've got an example here, such as, "I'm really honored to be considered for this position. I really look forward to hearing from you, and please let me know if you'd like any more information about me as well." So that's our nice sign off. So we'll have a look at an example of this structure in play in just a moment. But before we do that, just to kind of reiterate what we've spoken about throughout the course of this session already, is make sure that we tailor each application. And when I say application, job application, I mean both CV and cover letter document, tailor them specifically to that job description, to that job vacancy as well. Now, some roles might require you to showcase kind of a portfolio of your work in terms of work that you've previously done, just to kind of highlight, especially with creative industries, they'll typically ask for this information. So it's important to kind of get that preparation done on your end as well. And also then highlight certain skills and qualifications that you feel are relevant to that specific job role that you are applying for as well. So let's have a look at this example of a cover letter with the structure in place. So dear, so you've got the classic greeting and then Mrs. Webb. So assuming this is the name of the hiring manager, I guess, or the person in charge of the job vacancy. You've then got your first proper paragraph, which is introduction. So I'm a customer assistant currently employed by Smarks. I'd like to apply for the sales advisor role at Shirts and Skirts. So this is basically where you're saying, please put me onto sales advisor pile here. So that's something to consider. And then you've got another kind of sentence, which is the one that we spoke about earlier on. I heard about the job through seeing the position advertised on jobmarket.com. So this is something which, remember, it's the throwaway sentence. It doesn't really mean a lot to us, but it can mean the world to Mrs. Webb in this scenario here as well. We then move into our power paragraph, our summarizing ourselves paragraph. So I would describe myself as a friendly, helpful, patient team member. So all of these qualities are useful for a sales advisor role, and take pride in offering a great level of customer service. Okay, another tick in that box. I've been praised for. That's a really great sentence starter to think about. Maybe include it within a cover letter document. I've been praised for the warm manner in which I deal with customers. Again, we're kind of really selling ourselves here with this paragraph. We then move into our problem versus solution paragraph. So I think I'd be a great fit for the role because I pride myself in being able to cope well under stress. I've also worked part-time at Marquis whilst studying, and I'm used to dealing with a range of customers on a daily basis. So cope well under stress and dealing with a range of customers on a daily basis. Both of those two phrases have actually been lifted and picked up from the job vacancy description in general as well. So we then have our relevant achievements, the next kind of block here, which is in my spare time, enjoy volunteering at my local youth group in the village where I help to organize activities for the group. So organization skills are on show here, which again is another valuable trait for a sales advisor role. Also taking a short part-time course on counseling, as I love learning about the human mind and improving my listening skills. So listening skills is another important factor for this particular role that this individual is applying for as well. And then you've finally got your sign-off that we spoke about as well. So with that in mind, let's see if there's any sort of questions or comments that are coming at this stage. I can't see any questions at this stage. If there are any final questions that you'd like to kind of ask either myself and or Tessa about what we've covered today, feel free to pop them into the live chat. So to round off this session, let's have a look at how we can get ready for our job search. So this is where we're going to kind of have a look at some key considerations. So as well as where online you can find jobs, it's important to consider other factors relating to your job search. And first of all, one of the biggest factors to kind of consider when it comes to your job search is to be mindful and aware of your digital footprint. So what I mean by the word digital footprint, if I take away the word digital from it and I say to you, right, a footprint is what do you picture when you see a footprint? Okay, you're leaving footprints away. So if you think as you're walking away, so if you think about when you're walking on sand or when you're walking on snow, we leave a footprint, we leave a breadcrumb trail behind us. This is what we are doing online as well. So content that we actively share, but also passively, we can also be tagged in posts. We can also be added, our name can be added into certain kind of comments as well, or into articles. That all forms part of our digital footprint. What can be searchable and what can be what people can find out about us as well. Could even be kind of the pages and the organizations that we follow online in general. All of this forms part of our digital footprint. So this is something that we need to be aware of what forms part of it, and make sure that we actually are proactive in evaluating and assessing what serves us and what doesn't in general as well. And this is important from a recruitment point of view, because you can see that 90% of recruiters will check your social media presence to learn more about you, which makes sense, right? Because if we think about the first contact with employers and recruiters alike, is going to be that CV and or cover letter as well documents. Both of those documents are two-dimensional. That's it. So it kind of makes more sense these days for recruiters and employers to go on over to somebody's social media profile and actually see if they can find out a bit more information about them perhaps as well. You can also see that a third of employers use social media to find new recruits. So if we know this fact, we can use this to our benefit here as well. So we can really tidy up our social media presence. You can see that after employee referrals and company websites as well, that social media is the third most important recruiting tool out there as well. And for those of you who have a presence on LinkedIn as a platform, for instance, I'm sure you will be aware that there's a lot of kind of recruiters, a lot of employers on there, and it's a fantastic and fruitful platform for seeing and viewing and applying for job opportunities as well. Now, in terms of kind of thinking about our digital footprint actually forms part of our wider personal brand. And we run a fantastic 1-hour webinar session called Build Your Personal Brand Online, where we go a little bit more in depth into all of this here as well, where it's a case of kind of evaluating our social media, check our privacy settings. What can people who we are not connected with, what can they see about us? Especially when it comes to things like recruiters and employers are looking at those kind of those figures of 90% of recruiters will actively look at social media to try and find out a bit more about a candidate. Another way of kind of building out and creating a personal brand, which when I say personal brand, this is kind of where we are taking control back of our digital footprint. We control what is put out there about us because we are controlling that kind of narrative as well. But at the same time, we want to make sure that whatever narrative that we have kind of painted and that we're creating out there with our personal brand is that it's also authentic and honest to us. Because if we've painted a certain picture online about who we are, but then we go in for an interview and we're totally different, that's surely going to throw off an employer and or recruiter as well. So we want to consider that factor as well. But in terms of ways which we can kind of grow and create our personal brand, we can create a LinkedIn profile if you don't yet already have one. If we do have one, make sure that it's kind of filled out completely with our relevant experiences, relevant achievements, relevant previous work history as well. If we're looking to work within another industry, we can look to join discussions, network with those individuals, share engaging posts and content around that kind of industry that we are looking to kind of work within as well. Now, the beauty of kind of finding opportunities online is that we can think big. We don't have to kind of limit ourselves into certain industries and kind of think, oh yeah, just because of these qualifications, that's all I can do. We can kind of dream and kind of think big in general, and kind of be bold with our goals and plans in general as well. We can also identify trends with kind of the power of the internet. We can actually find out what are kind of some of the trending industries, what are some of the trending sectors where there's going to be a demand for an increased workforce as well. And if that kind of matches up with if those industries actually match up with your interests, then happy days. That's something that you can pursue and kind of look for opportunities within that industry going forward as well. We can also research roles, research requirements. How can we kind of get a one-up on our competition perhaps as well, on our other kind of competitors or the candidates who are applying for the same role as well? How can we get that extra edge from our end as well? So in terms of which tools that we can use for finding jobs, I'm sure many of us use various different tools out there. Some of them include the humble search engine. So I guess as with most things in life these days, if we want to find out a bit of information, what do we tend to do? We tend to Google it. It's become a verb these days, right? So we can just jump onto a search engine, type the question into the search query box, find out the answer pretty much in an instant. If we're and we can do the same with kind of job opportunities. There's other kind of job board websites as well that we can sign up with and kind of upload a CV document to, and that's something which is another place where we can kind of see a lot of job opportunities that are available as well, and also professional networking platforms such as the likes of LinkedIn are also fantastic places to discover job opportunities. Now, with Google, there is the Google Jobs Board, which some of you might have seen before. This is how it kind of looks like with this kind of screenshot, where you'll see a list on the left-hand side of various job roles relating to whatever you've typed into that search box. And you can segment these kind of that list of jobs that do appear based on kind of the job titles or the location or when those jobs were posted, and the company type as well, and the different industry sectors going forward. Now, whatever job that we are looking at, whether it be online or we find a job offline in terms of we see it's advertised elsewhere, we want to not think about a few different pieces of key information. Now, the obvious one that many of us will typically look at is salary and location. That's first and foremost. But what we also want to do is consider all the other three factors that you can see on screen. So think about the daily tasks and responsibilities. Are these daily tasks and responsibilities things that you will actively enjoy and that you actually have a strength in as well? If so, great. That's kind of another green flag on your end to think, oh, yeah, I think I should be applying for this role here. Think about if there's any sort of specific skills or experience that are required for the role that you may not have, and how can you actually gain that experience, or how can you develop that specific skill? What can you do in that period of time? It might be that you miss out on that particular job, but if another job comes up in the future which requires those specific skills and experiences, then by that point you would have developed that experience, or you would have actually developed that skill going forward as well. And also an important question which a lot of people nowadays do tend to ask for, and I think it's very important, because whenever we get to kind of a job interview stage, a lot of the times our mindset is that, oh, we're really desperate, we really want to get this job. But as well as the employer, as well as the recruiter interviewing us, we also should think about, well, we're also wanting to make sure that this role is right for us and it's going to be perfect for us. It's going to be just as fruitful for us as well. So we can also look to see within the job description, see what is the commitment to personal development. How can we grow? And if we don't get the answer here, then if we do decide to apply for that job role, then this is a question that we can have up our sleeve if we do get to the job interview stage, that we can ask the employer, ask the recruiter on the other end of the table, or kind of on the other end of the screen if it's kind of like a virtual interview as well. Now, one of the other things to kind of be aware of is whatever job that we do apply for, we want to make sure that our job kind of matches our values, what we believe in, what we care about the most in life as well. Because if we have that kind of that's the synergy between our own values and the values of that particular role that we're applying for, that's where we're able to do our best work. That's where we'll have our best motivation in general as well. And something really, really useful is having a career goal. I'm sure many of us do have some career goals in some shape or form, but what we can do is not just create any old kind of career goal. We can create a career goal, a smart career goal. You can see here, it's a career goal that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound as well. So we can make sure that we are kind of kept on the right track here going forward as well. So in terms of kind of the final question I want to kind of leave you with is, what are your career goals over the next year going forward as well? So with that in mind, let's have a final check-in with any questions. I believe that we are running a little bit short on time. Quick question here from Denise, who's mentioned, I always get shortlisted, past the initial interview, past the assessment test, but always fail to receive a job offer. What's the main reason why a job seeker fails to receive a job offer? That really kind of depends. I think, Denise, it's something to definitely speak to people within the industry that you're applying with as well. Maybe if you're able to reach out to a recruiter, reach out to an employer, and especially the ones that where you fail to get that job offer, there's nothing wrong in actually asking for feedback. Say, well, can you let me know why I didn't get the job? I went through all these stages, and getting that feedback is something that we can then take forward and look to kind of work on as well. Because at the end of the day, it could just be something as simple as somebody was more suited, somebody who's more qualified, whatever it might be. But it can help us kind of have more of a peace of mind, I guess, with that aspect. So yeah, definitely kind of reach out for kind of feedback there as well. And if there's any other thoughts that Tess has, feel free to kind of jot them into the chat as well. So in order to kind of round off this session, what are your next steps? Definitely check out the Google Career Certificates resource. Links here on screen. I'm sure that Tessa will drop this in the chat for you once again as well. If you are eligible to do so, definitely check out this resource. So I really hope that you found this session useful. If you did, both myself and Tessa would appreciate a little bit of feedback. We've got a feedback form link, which is on screen. And also be sure to check out the Google Digital Garage website. Remember, the link's in the video description box below. Sign up for other webinars. Also check out some of the online courses that are available. There's a course on the online courses section called the Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course, which is a course that you can complete at no charge, and off the back of it, you'll actually receive a certificate at no charge from Google, recognizing that you've completed that course as well. So definitely check out all of those resources. But apart from that, I want to say a massive thank you to Tessa, who surely agrees has been a wonderful chat moderator. And thank you all for tuning in to this Google Digital Garage webinar session. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.